welcome everybody, and welcome to the GSFE Admins Podcast, live from the GFETC. This is our second annual GFETC from the lovely Wisconsin Dells. My name is LENNON. I'm the Tech Director for the Eagle Grove Community School District in Eagle Grove, Iowa.
And this is actually the second annual, but third.
Yeah, Lance is kind of particular about that.
He is particular about his annual and inaugural things. So most people would say it's the third annual.
Very particular. Because
it's the third, but Lance Lennon insists that it's only the second annual because the first one was the inaugural.
And not annual.
And not annual.
It's not
but he's a little bit anal about that.
He's
so I think it's the third anal.
Yes. But who are you?
Oh, I was stuck on Lance's particular.
I'm not surprised that you were.
I'm Chad Ferricks. I'm the Director of Technology at Adele DeSoto Minburn Schools near Des Moines, Iowa.
And I am KARL Hare, Director of Technology for Ames Community Schools in Ames, Iowa.
And I am Joe Wakeman, today guest starring from the beautiful Wisconsin Dells. I'm the Technology Director for Nevada Schools in Nevada, Iowa.
Are you trying out for NPR?
Yes, I am.
With your soothing voice?
And next, soft jazz tones.
so soothing, so smooth. Anytime we get together and get to do a live recording, we like to thank our sponsors. So first off, Go Guardian actually supplied all the audio equipment for our recording, and the camera equipment was sponsored by Simple Ed Tech. And the recording software is Wirecast. Wirecast recording software, so simple, even Lance can run it.
Most of the time.
I've done very well the last 3 times that we've done a live recording.
You're right.
In all in one place. So thank you to our sponsors. We are, like I said, live at the GFETC in the Wisconsin Dells. It's the Google for Education Technical Conference. It is for Google admins. We draw a lot from Wisconsin, some from Minnesota, Iowa, Illinois. We've had Indiana, New York. I'm trying to think other places we've drawn from. Ohio.
Mm-hmm. Didn't that guy from Washington come last year?
There was someone from
Washington State.
Yeah, Washington State. We've drawn not huge numbers from that far away, but we have drawn numbers. So it's very nice to have people here. We do have an audience today. We have one person on camera, 2 people off camera. They refuse to sign the waiver, so we won't show their faces, and they are enjoying themselves at the Dells also. So we're happy to be here, and we're going to kind of go. It's some fun things happening on the Admin Council. Let's kick it off there. KARL wasn't even aware that there was a change to
I don't go in there. I use
user
GAM for
administration.
Everything. Who uses the dashboard? I mean, come on. It's slow and clunky. Just use the command line.
Slow and clunky. I use the dashboard. Changes to the dashboard. Anybody use the changes in the dashboard?
Yeah, when I heard they had come out. So there is a couple cool new buttons. Like for users, you can bulk upload users now with a CSV right from there. It's a button. They even give you a nice link to the template that you have to use to get them in the right place and with the right information. Another handy feature that I did use the other day was you can download users to create a CSV to put somewhere else. So where I'm going with this is, like KARL, I usually use GAM for such things.
Yes.
But now they're making pretty buttons in here that do some of the same things I would do in GAM normally. Because I talked about it in one of my sessions today, why we still have server racks, move everything to the cloud, about not having an LDAP server at all. So the user base would be here, meaning you couldn't export it from an LDAP, so they're making it a little bit more graphical and user-friendly to get that information out of your system and into a CSV, which you can manipulate, obviously, and use for various other purposes.
And while those features have been available, they were clicks deep.
Yeah.
So now everything is you go to one panel and it's a hover over that you either get the options or drop downs where you don't have to change panes, which again, the fewer clicks, it's the old principle, anything more than 3 clicks deep and people are going to be less likely to use it.
Right.
So.
And KARL actually listened because I usually complain that you nor KARL use the God-blessed search feature that Google started with to look for users.
But
he just admitted, I never go to the user list. I just search for the user I need to change. So KARL hadn't seen the pretty hover buttons.
Yeah. And then, of course, part of the admin or the conference itself is we do have the sessions. One of my sessions was on device selection and management. And, of course, I got the new device management interface that dropped
finally did
Thursday.
get that?
I finally got it just in time to change everything for my workshop. I love it when that happens, but same type of user interface. They're making it much more user-friendly, that you're going to one pane of glass and being able to hover over things. It was hard for me, the search feature, searching for individual Chromebooks, rather than now knowing that in Chrome devices, it's a filter, and you have to go up to filter. But if you look at the filters, there's a lot more options to go through in terms of what you can search upon that you before didn't have that option necessarily. So again, I think functionality is about the same. Usability is improved.
So something, correct me if I'm wrong, but
You're wrong.
I don't think from within Device Management Chrome devices, you could manage organizational units previously.
No.
You had to pop out and go to use it. It just drove me nuts because I'm here and that button was missing. So they've sort of unified it and made similar functionality for both places, users and devices, which is pretty handy. So it's more similar, and you can manage organizational units from within the device stuff.
You also saw that, and you're seeing that with the groups too.
Yep.
You can manage group membership directly from the user, which really freaks people out when you start talking about GAM commands where you're updating the group and the group membership not being a function of the user, but a function of the group. But it's actually kind of nice now where you can kick users out of groups or add them to groups directly from that user management pane. And that really, really helps. The one thing I wish is we're getting some nice changes and some nice updates and that sort of thing, but they are not, it's still not an efficient tool right now. It's still slow, still kludgy, and I'm hoping it gets better, and we keep getting told it's gonna get better. But I do like that there's some improvements coming. One thing that, because I usually don't pay attention when Chad talks, one thing that I did do was I went in and I found that you can filter your users, and then those filters are passed to your extracts. So that's kind of cool. And then it dumps it directly into, you can dump it directly into Google Docs as a sheet. So you don't have to extract it as a CSV. So rather than building a query out in GAM to kick out a spreadsheet that I want, you could actually filter it fairly simply right there in the GUI. And you can extract
Didn't I
your
just say
users.
that, Lance?
You just did clearly just say that.
But that's the thing, is I didn't listen, and
He was
because I
busy
was
clicking away.
testing it.
He was
Well,
just
see
and
what
to
it
be
did.
fair,
That's
Carl
kinda cool.
did just say he normally doesn't listen to you.
did.
Yeah.
So
He did preface it with that.
that's,
With
you
that
guys are like an
caveat.
old married couple.
Something like that.
So, yes, the part, I usually export that to CSV, but there is not a box where you can change that directly to a Google Sheet. So basically, exactly what GAM used to do for a lot of that stuff. You
GAM
can do
still
in the
does
GUI.
that. Doesn't used to do.
Oh, right. Right. GAM still does.
The one thing I'm
You can
still
now do graphically inside of the console.
the one thing I'm still waiting for is Google to acknowledge or allow you the use of a Google Sheet to upload users rather than having to download it as a CSV and then bring it back into Google. So it's like, I built this sheet, you should be able to somehow just know this should be a CSV and put the stuff in the right.
It's too much work for Google.
Well,
Lennon. They give you a CSV template
okay.
that you will probably load into a Google Sheet to
Yes,
populate and then
that's exactly what
re-export
I'll
as
do.
a CSV.
Yes.
They don't want to do that work for you. They want it to be a little bit of work.
So Google, as I know you are listening, let us import users directly from a Google Sheet.
They always listen to us.
And they always do exactly what we ask. Believe it or don't.
I don't.
I don't.
Joe, how are you doing as a super guest today?
I am just loving every minute of it. It's like celebrity match game or celebrity dating game, but
Oh, we're dating.
dysfunctional.
Well, these two are.
So who's the?
We're the old married couple, apparently.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. That's okay.
So, what sessions did you have today, Joe?
I had so amazing that I can't remember, so I have to look at the schedule. Admin console best practices, Citrix desktop as a service for Chromebooks, and student help desk.
Yeah. How did your Citrix session
My
go?
Citrix session had a whopping 0 participants today, guys.
Shoot.
And are you repeating that session tomorrow? Maybe they're just all waiting until tomorrow.
Maybe they
Yeah,
were.
that's the suspense. We'll
It's,
we'll keep
we
everybody in
find out
suspense.
tomorrow whether
That's
Joe
right.
gets done early or if
Well,
Joe has a record crowd,
I think it was because Carl had all the people in his security session.
which he was only doing once.
It was
Yeah.
was only happening once, and it is super important. You did cover some good stuff. Anything's new in security, Carl, that we should be aware of?
Actually, there are a couple things in security that are new and exciting that I hadn't seen before. We've talked about the password management where you can start enforcing passwords over certain number of days and that sort of stuff. We actually talked about that last time we were up here in the spring, right?
Yes.
So you couldn't use this password again. You had to change it every so many days. The other things that we're starting to see is Google is adding a lot of machine learning in the back end with some of these tools. So there's a new area called the context aware access. It's beta currently, and it's also one of those tools that I think we're going to start to see more of that is for enterprise users only. So it's enterprise EDU users only that have access to them. And you can do certain things like you don't allow your users to log into their GAF accounts from Safari or from Internet Explorer or that sort of stuff, or some examples that are in there. But again, that's one of those tools that you don't really have access to unless you pay for it. That's one that we talked about for quite a while because that's relatively new. And then the other big thing
Carl,
is...
before you go on-
Oh, yes.
You had a lot of people in your security session.
Yes.
How many of them were enterprise class?
Let me think.
How many of them paid for enterprise?
So I asked that question, and give me a second. I'm going to count. Mental picture that I took of the number of hands that were up, 0. Actually, none of them are, because it's really expensive. And I understand that we are, and we've talked about this before too. We are amazingly spoiled in EDU. We get all of these things for free, and then when somebody has the audacity to ask us to pay for a tool that took millions of dollars of R&D to make, we get terribly upset that they didn't give us to us for free. And so I get it. It's just it's at a price point that's a little rough, I think, for school districts to go. Some of the bigger schools that have really put a high priority on some of the things relative to security have foot the bill for it. They pay for it.
So my point to that goes, I understand making us pay for certain tools, but making us pay for a security tool, that's sort of...
It's not necessarily a feature. That's more of a would be great to have. Than
Yeah. The
Then,
more
no, it's
the
just not
more
this
secure
add-on.
every user is, the more secure everything is, right? So having that be an enterprise only feature is disappointing
And I can see that.
for me.
I can see where you would want that as, I mean, this is part of the Gmail or Google brand, Gmail brand, that you've got this tool that makes it more secure. To me, that's just an awesome selling point as to why you would want to use Google Apps. And if you had some of those tools more generally available for free editions or built in with your core subscription.
Right. And to me, it's not putting any more load. Like, I understand some of the advanced reporting stuff that the enterprise people get. That makes sense because they're running massive reports that takes processing power. Context awareness, I'm not quite sure, but that, especially for the people that can't afford to pay, we're the little guys. So it's just disappointing that something that helps keep everyone more secure, they're putting in that enterprise class bucket. It's disappointing to me.
Maybe it's in enterprise right now and will be shifted down, but I'm sure there was R&D monies into it that they would like to recoup.
But they,
And maybe it's economies of scale too. You're only going to have so many people buy this expensive product, so they'll kind of flesh it out and then start to roll it out once it's this, or maybe a light version of it, I guess. I don't know.
You're going to make your enterprise people your guinea pigs.
yeah,
But I
Here,
also,
pay for the
seen it
guinea
done
pig
before.
experience.
that's usually contrary to what they.
so
And, Google does what Google does.
because I don't
They are the Google.
I don't pay for that tool, right? So I don't know exactly. I only have the documentation to read through and see what it
Yep.
is. The examples they give are ones that like restrict access to apps from outside the corporate network. I kind of want my teachers to be able to access their things when they're off campus, and I'm not going to set up a VPN tunnel for all of my teachers back so their devices show up on the network so that they can get into Google Drive. But I understand if you're a corporation that's protecting IP or have highly sensitive data, why you would want that. Another one, they have allow access to drive only if a user's device storage is encrypted. Again, I don't know if that's one that necessarily a school district would need, but I totally get what you're saying and what you're getting at. Just some of the use cases they have, they don't seem to be education targeted use cases.
It'd be awesome if you could kind of piecemeal some of this stuff rather than, yeah, I want the machine aware learning stuff, but I don't want some of that more advanced reporting in the campus lockdown or
And then pay for
device
it,
lockdown, yeah.
selection.
Kind of a la carte.
The one example, and I left it to last on purpose, but the one example they did give that I really liked was allow access to apps only from company-issued devices. So that gets around one of the security things that we talk about is something as simple as allowing offline access to files, right? So if you have a teacher that goes home, hops on their computer at home, signs in, replicates their files to their computer, those files become some way either left behind or exposed to some sort of malware, ransomware. They get then encrypted, and then copied back up to Google, and then all their files are hosed. That's with FileStream, it's not as big of an issue because you only have the files that you're actively working on. With the old backup and sync tools, that was a much bigger concern. But I do think as a school district, allowing access to those things from only company-issued devices to me that's one where I'm like, yeah, that would be really nice to have as a school district because we assign devices to all of our staff.
Yep.
Not every school does. I mean, there's some schools where staff are given a laptop or a desktop in their classroom, and that's all they have access to. So I kind of get that, but that's one with some of that came up with the contextually aware stuff. And then the other big thing we talked about is confidential mode. So confidential mode came to all of us in EDU. It was open and available to the public for a long time. In fact, we all sent around the Google admin groups, and we talked on the podcast too, how to prevent users from sending confidential mode emails to your students or to your staff or into your domain, setting up a custom email rule to kick those back. But now that Vault has insight to those emails, both internal and emails that are received, having confidential turned on for some of the users in your domain might be actually a good thing. You think about some of your nurses on staff, some of your counselors, administrators, some of those things that are kind of borderline HIPAA files or HIPAA data points, having that confidential mode and then having the reliability of having it in Vault even after it terminates itself makes worth having for sure. But that's one of the things is it came on once it reached general availability, it was turned on by default.
Yeah.
Right.
So if you did not want confidential mode in your domain, you need to go and turn that off under your Gmail settings.
Yep.
And I turned it off.
I turned it off too, for now. Like you said, I'll re-enable it for certain groups, but I turned it off as a whole until it gets closer to the school year, and I sort of wait until closer to the beginning of the school year to reevaluate the admin settings because Google tends to change things around ISTE time and add a whole bunch of crap, or through the summer, and I like to do everything all in one shot rather than piecemeal it, so.
Well, the other thing too is, and I really emphasize it in my security session, is, and if we do best practices, it needs to be emphasized as well too in those sessions, is there are some of these decisions that can't be made by the tech director.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? Something like confidential mode, I'm gonna have a conversation with my superintendent.
Right.
And, what do you say about this? This is what the implications, these are the pluses and the minuses, this is my recommendation, but you can say no, right? It's like when Vault became free. Our policy in the district was we don't have a policy for email retention, but when it became free, I went to my soup and said, hey, this would do this, 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 and this if we make this change. Something as simple as just a simple little turning on Vault aren't necessarily something that we should take on as ourselves. You know, we talk about regexes and looking for bad words or self-harm and those sort of tools. It's not that we technically can't turn it on and make it work. What happens when we find them? Because I'm not equipped, nor is it in my job description, to help in a situation of self-harm or a threat to the district. So having continued conversations with the decision makers in your district or place of employment is super, super important, so that you have the support if you push for a big change like enforced two-factor authentication and that sort of stuff.
And we talked about, I did the third-party tools, and we talked about the content compliance stuff in email and having in place policies that if this comes up, what's gonna happen? Because if I turn it on before the policy is in place and something does happen, and I hate to say it this way, because it really comes off, in my opinion, cold, is if something happens, the liability is there, that, you know, the school is liable, you're liable. And I'm not saying liability trumps taking care of someone, but I'm saying it's better to have the policies in place, knowing what you're going to do so that the proper care is given to the person who needs it, especially with self-harm, and or that the proper steps are taken for security reasons for any type of violence against your district. But yeah, if you just turn it on and all of a sudden all this email comes to you, you got a lot on your plate that you weren't ready for.
And a lot of this stuff, there's a lot of unintended, or not unintended, but there's a lot of implications and other things other than a pure technical standpoint.
Yeah.
A lot of people are gonna see things, a lot of Google admins are gonna see things from a purely technical standpoint, but things like content compliance and flagging. With our filter, we use malicious activity scanning and reporting. So that was quite honestly a multiple month conversation on how are we gonna handle certain things when they come in, what's gonna be who's gonna get the emails, how's it gonna be taken care of. I mean, that was a pretty strategic and planned conversation before we actually clicked the one little checkbox. I mean, I could have done that in a second. It would have been done and it would have been on and we would have moved on. But I think there's a lot of conversations and a lot of stakeholders that you need to involve with those conversations.
Yes, so when we went with GoGuardian, and they, some of GoGuardian's changing, but we were able to get on the tail end of when self-harm reporting, the smart alerts for self-harm, were still a part of the main thing, and we'll maintain that through our license, but just before turning on those smart alerts, it was a 3-month conversation, because we had to figure out policies and procedures of when, who got what of those alerts,
And
what was
honestly,
gonna happen.
I feel it should have been. I mean, you have to have those conversations.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's so easy from the tech perspective to just be like, yeah, that's a good idea, I'm gonna turn that on, but no, there's a whole heck of a lot more.
Things have to happen.
Other sides that you know nothing
Yeah,
about.
we can make the alert happen, but it's what needs to happen after that.
After the alert.
Yeah.
Yep.
Did you talk in your security session about not enabling SMS or voice calls on two-factor?
Nope.
Oh.
Oh.
So who, why?
Another
So-
update, no, so another update that
I
came
know,
out inside of the two-factor authentication. Two things came out in two-factor. One is the ability to generate codes for legacy apps for two-factor, those that can't use modern, two-factor authentication methodologies. And two is the ability to turn off text and voice calls with the codes, the two-factor authentication. So they found that SMS and of course voice calls are easy to hack. And so, does anybody still use text though?
We do.
Yep.
Yep.
I did not disable those.
No, my staff can still get text, and the biggest issue was when we set it up and enforced it for our staff, it was with the understanding they're gonna get a text on their phone rather
Yep.
than having to use the Authenticator app, using their iOS or their Android phone, or carrying around a YubiKey or some other key fob, or carrying around a bunch of printed numbers.
Right.
They would have the ability to just get a text. So we weren't gonna turn it off. I can understand why, but again, we're at least raising the bar for our users and for someone to get into our system. The one that always bothers me the most, and it just, every time it happens, 2 weeks later, someone will say, oh, I got a text last Saturday night at 3 a.m. with an authentication code. And I just sit there and look at them, I'm like, that means somebody has your username and password. And I said in my session today is that, yeah, the person goes, oh, I love that password. I use it for everything. And I'm just like,
Hold on,
and
this
you go to
isn't-
which bank?
This is an admin conference.
That what?
You had someone in your session today that said.
No, someone in session did say one of my staff members says.
Oh, one of your
my
staff members. I
will
thought
say,
I misheard
I
you.
got a
I'm
text.
like,
they'll tell me
what?
2 weeks later that they got a text that,
Yep,
that
okay.
they weren't logging in.
But I like
And
that
I'm-
password. I use it for
And
everything.
I like that password. I like your password so much I use it for everything. So I'm always like, yes. And tell me which bank you're at again.
And because you got that text message, that means someone has your username, your information,
Yes.
and that password that you use for everything.
Yes,
Have fun changing it everywhere.
everywhere.
Now, so with that particular setting, it becomes a lot harder for me to be able to get 100% buy-in for enforced
Yes,
two-factor.
That's why I didn't turn
that's-
it off.
That's what I said.
If I say you have to have a smartphone
Yeah.
to do this, because not everybody, I didn't have 100% have a cell phone.
Correct.
Right? So
Me neither.
you have to have a smartphone, and then you're like, oh yeah, okay, so let's say everybody does have a smartphone. Okay, we're gonna make that leap, right? Well, they might not have unlimited data. So then they get a data call, so, oh no, we gotta put all of your personal cell phones on your network, so you're using the Wi-Fi in order to check in when they're on your network.
And that's and then what if they're at home and authentication comes up?
Right, right. Well, but they'd
Well,
only
they
have their
don't-
Wi-Fi
They don't
at
have
home.
to work. When they're off contract at home, they don't have to work.
Oh, there's Chad.
Because there was
They're choosing to work
obviously-
at that point, and
Okay,
then
very
choosing to
true.
get the authentication code.
there was a lot of sales that had to go into convincing people that, yes, this is okay. It's not going to violate you in any sort of way. It's not going to cause you lots of money and steal anything from you. Google's not going to hack your brain because they send you a text message to log in.
I had the same issues selling it to everyone, and there are those people that just like to nitpick at every little detail. I said, you can always print your 10 codes. Done. Now you have to carry those with you, or you won't have access.
What I hope is that it doesn't go away entirely, where they take away the option for verification codes via text and phone call. Because if that did, then I couldn't have enforced two-factor. in my
Well,
district.
you could've- you
I
could've,
could. I'd
'cause
have
you
to buy
could've-
YubiKeys.
You would no, because they
You
can
can
still
still
print
print
the
the
codes. So anyone without a smartphone that can use an authenticator app would have to print codes and carry them around.
But they would have to use a smartphone to set it up in the first place.
No, they don't.
You can set it up.
You
from
can't
your-
go direct to codes. You have to, first time you set it up, you have to set it up with a phone number, and then you can go to codes. For you to do pre-printed codes, that's the only way we were able to get it to work. We had to set it up the first time. Now, I could go in and print codes for you.
Yes.
Yes,
the
that's what
first
I
time.
did. I guess.
Oh, no, I
Okay.
didn't do that.
Oh, okay.
I
Okay.
wanted them to set it up. I didn't print the codes out for them and give them codes.
Well, I was just thinking the number of people that this would actually be in effect for, I could print out the first use codes. But, and again, by now, at this point, if SMS goes away, most of my people are, well, my staff, all my staff are currently set up. There would just be new staff that comes in,
Yep.
so.
Yeah, I'm with you though, Carl. I don't want that to go away. It just causes another layer of issue. We're trying to help these people be more secure with student data and their own data on our accounts. And two-factor is a great way to do that. So making it easier to sell it to people
Rather than harder.
rather
Makes
than
complete
harder
sense.
makes more sense to me.
Yeah, oh yeah.
But I understand too that this whole G Suite for EDU wasn't set up for EDU to begin with.
Nope, it wasn't.
Right? We were not the target audience for this.
What?
And they want to continue to make money, so
What?
setting it up so that a Fortune 500 company can protect what they need to in the highest,
Yep.
most secure manner possible, that helps keep the things free for us,
Yep.
right?
Word.
Indeed.
Anything else super interesting in security?
No, not that I know of. I do want to talk about brand accounts eventually, though.
Oh.
It has nothing to do with security, but I do want to talk about that.
Oh, we hadn't talked about that?
We haven't
Stop.
talked about it on the podcast yet.
Stop bringing that up. Well, let's jump there
It's a
since you
nightmare
brought it
that's
up.
over.
Okay, brand accounts.
The nightmare's
Oh,
not over.
yay.
It's just been delayed.
It's
He's
been
like
kicked
Freddy
down the road.
Krueger. He just keeps coming back.
So I am betting nearly every one of you got an email that said, hey, you have a whole bunch of brand accounts set up in your domain, and then on this date, those brand accounts will be deleted, including all of the content related to those brand accounts. So I looked at that and I thought, what's a brand account? And so,
As did 99% of the YouTube world.
doing some research, we found out that users could create a YouTube account that is not associated with the name of their Gmail account. Correct me if I'm wrong in any of this. And then what the users were doing was using those brand accounts to bypass the security features of like restricted YouTube and pre-approved YouTube. However, those of us in school districts that have tons of YouTube content, broadcast all of our school board meetings via YouTube, have all of them up there, had a brand account that multiple users could put content up there
For your brand.
for our
your
brand, that had no way to continue. So I started to freak out because I didn't have the space in a public account to move all of our content, nor did I want to move all of our board meetings and internal professional development videos and that sort of stuff to a public Gmail account.
Because all the links changed. So any sort of reference you had to those videos, you would
Would be
have
null.
to find them all and change all the links.
Correct. So for us, we had a fairly robust internal video setup where we have model videos recorded that are then submitted links via YouTube that dump into a spreadsheet, which are then visualized through awesome tables so that you could search for Show Me Responsive Classroom and it would click on a link. So all of those links would change because of this brand account move. We weren't even given the option to turn off brand accounts for like our students. So I get why they're doing it with the students, but so I had a spreadsheet with well over 1,000 brand accounts that I needed to figure out whether they were really brand accounts or kids trying to bypass stuff or kids setting up their own YouTube channel back before we turned off their ability to set up a YouTube channel and start doing the research on that. So how did you guys deal with it in your districts when you first saw this?
So I didn't have quite as many, but for student, I was able to easily filter student accounts out. So I ignored them. I sent the whole list some additional information because the original email they got was not necessarily very descriptive what was going on because we got the same one and I didn't understand it. So I did my research and then sent a follow-up email to the entire list.
Yep.
Okay? But then after learning more and more, I sort of ignored the student ones and then asked follow-up questions to the actual staff ones, and I had only one or two that were actually affected. So I left it up to them how they wanted to deal with it. I didn't not at ADM. If it had been at Spirit Lake, we would have had a much bigger issue. We had teachers that had whole YouTube channels that weren't their personal email address. It was a brand account. Because that's what it suggested when you did such a thing,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Is make a unique email address for this. But like math videos, one math teacher flipped her classroom and posted all of her math videos, right? So that would have been a giant mess. They did not have that issue at ADM. I was fortunate.
How about you other two yahoos?
I had the same situation, looked at my list. So my notifications go to a different one. I don't use my standard user account as my notifications account, so it actually went to a different one. I had to go to that email account to find them, and it was only after someone said, "Hey, did you know they mailed out a list?" And I'm like, "I didn't get a list." And so I looked and I was like, "Oh no, that's a different." So I did go in, did look, and most of them were students. The vast majority were students. I had 2 teachers on there, and I contacted them individually and said, "Do you need to do something for it?" And they fixed it. My account was linked to the iTech brand account, and all I had to do was unlink it. So nothing happened with the iTech videos. They're still there. My account I can't access it with my school account anymore, and I'm fine with that. That's not a problem. So the 2 teachers had like 2 videos that they weren't important to them, and so we really had no issues.
Okay.
So we had all of our PR videos that were on our YouTube channel. So what I did in the interim was made my personal Gmail account an owner and removed all the school accounts. Now, I'm reading the email Google sent literally that it said GAF accounts cannot be owners of the brand account. Well, you can add a collaborator or a contributor to a brand account, So what I'm planning on doing is, now that it's past July 10th, which was the cutoff date, I
Right.
think, I'm gonna go try and add my school account back in as a contributor, not as an owner, and see if I can still manage it and act as I had prior. It's just the school account technically isn't the owner of the channel.
Right.
Right, and the reason for that is if you're only a contributor, you can't log in as
Correct.
that brand
Yep, correct,
and bypass the filtering.
correct.
So it makes sense
Which,
how they did
and
it.
if I can do that, the only other thing is,
But now
is
all those
now-
videos are under your personal account.
but
It's
they're under
out-
my brand account. They're still under Nevada Community School District, and that's what everybody sees. But the
Right.
back end of the brand account is tied to my personal
That's
Gmail.
what
Right.
my problem
Yep.
is.
Correct.
Yep.
And so now you
Which I don't
have-
really want to do.
Correct, correct.
No, because any
So-
of those videos, in the long, I don't worry about you, but
Yeah.
if that was any other teacher that didn't
Yeah,
have access, and let's say they were
absolutely.
removed from staff for some reason, they
It's
have
gone.
access to all that information,
Yep.
and boy, those nefarious teachers can do some stuff.
Yep.
So
Sure.
what I'm hearing is that none of you filled out the form to
Get a
be
one-year extension.
asked to have the extension.
I didn't know, I didn't need to.
So I went through the list like you guys did, and I had a boatload of kids' accounts on there, and I don't care about the kids. And actually, I found my 2 sons on there, and so I'm like, well, in the process of trying to figure out what this is, I'm like, Matthew, bring me your computer. Come over here. We're gonna look at YouTube. He had no idea what was going on. Had no idea he set up a brand account. It was completely unintentional.
Well, because originally when you set up a YouTube channel, it just sort of made
See,
one for you.
That's
Yep.
what we were trying to figure out, how so many kids had these brand accounts, and it seemed like that was kind of the default. You signed up, or you signed into YouTube with your Gmail account, and
Right.
then it prompted you to create a brand account to contribute.
Yes.
Yep.
And so I basically said, all right, any of the students, I don't care about it. It's not that big a deal. We had less than 20 staff accounts that I had to worry about. And so I emailed them directly, and it was, like our band had a bunch of their performances uploaded. I mean, a few hundred videos, our choir, our school district brand account. So we had I had a math teacher that has all of her flip videos up there that we needed to deal with. And so there was a lot that I needed to deal with. So one of the things that I appreciate like crazy is that Google listens to their users. And this really started a firestorm among the users of Google and used for G Suite.
Well, and I had kind of wondered, because after that first email came out, everybody's freaking out, and then we had kind of heard some guidance from a couple different channels that, hey, yeah, Google didn't expect this, or it was a mistake, this isn't gonna happen. Well, then, turn around a couple weeks later, we get the email that, yep, it's still happening, but we're adding in this grace period if you really need it, and here's the list of users. So it's like, oh, crud, this is really coming.
Yep. And so the thing that bummed me out is that I couldn't give them just a list. I had to fill out the Google form for each one of the users. And then I got a response back from Google support for each one of the users that said that, yes, this user was added, blah, blah, blah. So basically now I've kicked the can down the road a year to figure out a solution for the brand accounts. What I'm hoping happens between now and then is that Google will allow us to have
A brand account.
brand
Well, find
accounts
that medium.
for the adults.
Yeah.
Let me set up
Let
a
it be a
brand
setting.
account.
Yeah, let that be a setting in the console.
Correct. Let me have an OU-based setting in the console to say, yes, they can have a brand account. Because there's a ton of valid reasons for brand accounts in a K-12 environment.
Yes.
I understand why not having the kids have that. And, smack my hands like, when a kid gets into, we used to have the issue with Google Plus. They go into Google Plus and they'd lie about their birth date.
Yeah.
And Google would find out and
And
block
Google
their
would find
account.
out, like their account. You'd have
Yeah.
to say, yes, I promise to never do this again, and I can prove that blah, 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 blah. Give me that level with these brand accounts, so that we can continue that. Because this is something that, for us, is super, super important, and I don't think we're alone. I am a little surprised that at this table, I'm more in the minority about the importance of those brand accounts. But I think if you had been in a different district, it would have
Yes.
been different.
Yes, in my
Yeah.
previous district, it would have been different. Yeah, we just haven't utilized YouTube the way we did in my prior district, so.
Yeah, that was a huge thread on our Google Plus community.
And I just
Yeah.
kept refreshing, hoping that
Someone would
there's-
come up
there's
with a
gonna-
better
there's gonna be
solution.
something else to this. There's going to be something else to this. Google's going to back off.
It
There's gotta be
never
something,
came.
And yeah,
that's,
And I'm not, like I said, I'm not happy with my solution of putting my personal account as the owner of this.
no, and I really don't
Say I
want to do
get hit
that.
by a bus. I mean, yeah, I'm gonna have other people as collaborators on that if that.
I'm not gonna say you get hit by a bus.
Well,
That's just not nice.
And I guess a better solution would have been maybe to make a new personal,
And document that.
yeah, and document it somewhere. But, and I've had, well, back in the early days of Android on, Android and EDU, it only worked with EDU accounts, right? So I had a whole bunch of personal
Personal
Gmail
Gmails.
accounts to make all that work in the early days.
Yep.
Um,
That's not a bad idea.
And that was all
One thing I
documented.
wonder is, now that that personal account's an owner, do I still have it used to be limited to 10 minutes per uploaded video. Some of the live stuff, you had to either pay for, or as EDU, we got it for free.
Mm-hmm.
So is that stuff gonna go away now that I've moved to shipped off? that
That's a
channel?
great question, because I think you would have to pay for the premium.
Yeah. To get those features back that
Yeah.
we had enjoyed.
Yeah, and our school board meetings, not 10 minutes. Yes.
Really, Carl?
No,
You have public people who speak for not 10 minutes.
When they're limited to
Public,
three, aren't they?
public comment that's limited to 3 to 5 minutes and.
That goes over the limit for
Somehow, yeah.
YouTube, yeah. All right. Is that enough on branded accounts?
I think so. I
Okay,
think so.
you feel better?
I do. Well,
Okay.
I'm still crabby
Because
about it,
Google's listening, and again, Google, since you are listening, we would love control of branded accounts for adults being able to say, yes, these are adults and they can have it, and OUs that are not, cannot. All right. Anything extra? So like I said, we do have audience here, and any audience questions today? We won't even put you on
Do you
camera.
want a piece of cake? We have
but
cake.
we have cake.
There's cake today. That's a new thing. If you don't have any, that's fine. I have one thing that I could finish up with.
Well, you just really.
If he
you
doesn't
had-
have
if you-
anything.
No, yeah, but now it's
Give
like, well,
him
I
the
have
chance
something,
to
but if you.
respond.
I did give him.
Yeah,
I said,
that's fine.
if you
He
don't have
laughed,
anything,
and
I
then
can.
you talked.
Yeah, it's fine.
Wait
Chad,
time.
it's all about Chad. It's the Chad show.
It's not. Seriously, any question you have is going to be better than what I have.
I mean, I don't know that I have very much to ask that, what kind of question you would
Oh, no, just wonder if you had any question. I mean,
Any
seriously,
question,
like, I mean,
whatever, about anything.
could even be about tribbles.
What's a tribble?
You know what a
Tribble?
tribble is?
I'm
Oh,
kidding.
goodness.
The trouble
I'm
with
kidding.
tribbles?
I'm
Do
kidding.
you know the
They are.
combination on the safe for the, no.
The biggest challenges I face in my environment regarding G Suite is the integration with Active Directory. And I have some questions about that, specifically my ed tech who focuses on account creation as one of the primary things, is having problems that since they updated the Cloud Directory Sync tool, it doesn't properly sync the passwords on account creation. So she's basically creating the accounts, and then she has to manually go to each account
Reset the password.
update their password so that it will sync properly to the,
So it's only on initial account creation that breaks, correct?
correct.
So the question,
So-
the comment is about, or the.
Yeah.
the-
Go repeat what you said.
So
Kinda.
it's about GCDS, Google Cloud Directory Sync. They're creating users in Active Directory. And when his tech creates said users in Active Directory and they sync to Google, they do not sync passwords until there is a password change in Active Directory that then forces a sync to Google with the correct password. And so your tech is having to go into Active Directory to each individual user and either create a new password or do a password reset.
Correct.
So here's what I've did. I don't like using the Syncy Sync tools, whichever one you want to use. So what I had done at Spirit Lake and now and doing it at ADM, I wrote a simple bat file, no joke, that uses the AD commands, so AD add user thing, DC add, right? So it asks some basic account creation questions to whoever's doing it. So at Spirit Lake, I had my assistant, and whoever creates an account does it here. So they're going to have to go do that stuff anyway, right? So I just do it in a bat file. It's very simple, no pretty GUI, just a bat file. I ask some questions. They input the text, which includes the password. But when they answer the last question, are you sure you want to create this user? It creates the AD account and the Google account with the same password. So it uses the DS add on the AD side, but then a GAM command in the script on the Google side. But then it has the same password on initial account creation, so it should be good to go and solve your issue.
That was exactly the sort of, I guess, response I had planned, was to write a PowerShell script.
Yeah, PowerShell. I just write, I'm old school, so I write bat files. But yeah, PowerShell script would do the same thing.
I just noted that it seemed to be a problem with the tool, especially since the tool reports, like, if you look at the logs, it says it's created the hash
Yep.
successfully with the account creation, but the user cannot log in.
Have you updated the password sync on all your domain controllers?
Yes, in fact, that is what caused the break. It used to work, and I recently moved off of 2008 R2 domain controllers onto 2016 domain controllers.
Thank you.
And,
But you're right, it is more secure and thus breaks that.
right, and that was exactly the.
And you've updated to the latest GC
Yes,
DS?
My Google Cloud Directory sync is on the most up-to-date version, my password sync tool is on the up-to-date version, and I've updated my force level for my Active Directory domain to service class.
So I guess my solution to you would be, if you're comfortable writing PowerShell scripts, write your own sync tool. All you have to do is learn a couple simple GAM commands.
That leads into I guess, another question for you. What are security concerns regarding installing GAM tools on a domain controller?
We covered that in our GAM workshop.
So he asked, what are the security concerns about installing GAM on a domain controller?
There are some, because whoever has access to that domain controller would have access to GAM, and thus access to all of your Google user data through GAM. So
And
we,
contrarily, if you wanted them to have access to GAM, they have to have access to your directory.
they do. They
Yeah,
have
so
to
you-
basically be
So
an
it has to be
admin.
someone you would trust to have access to both.
Right, so we actually recommend not installing it on a domain controller that everyone has access to. We actually super recommend installing it in the cloud, using Cloud Console, which is free, and then running it from wherever you have internet access. If you need to run it for scripts, set up a VM that only you have access to and run the scripts from there, because you can install the directory tools on just a regular instance without having the full-blown, right? And then not setting it up with like your default admin credentials that everyone on the tech team knows, and just credentials for you, if you need to script stuff.
But then, the question is, does he then have access from that VM to also do an Active Directory? So when you create a bat file that does both, what are you running it on?
A Windows machine?
So, right, but it's not a directory server?
No.
Okay, so
But
it's just,
you can install the admin tools that are required.
yep,
Management tools
Yep,
run AD PowerShell commands, not on the PC.
right.
Yeah.
And in which case, I'd almost just make a VM that's got all that stuff cooked in, and then people can
spin it up.
spin that up and remote into that, so that way you're not even having to do that on all those individual workstations, and as they get new workstations, install it on, or that workstation becomes compromised, it's just on that VM that.
So yeah, don't put GAM on a DC.
So,
I
and
would, I would
and-
spin up something with lesser access.
So I think the issue here is we have found a workaround, suggested a workaround. It is not a solution. The solution is GCDS is broken, and they need to fix it,
well-
or AD needs to be fixed somehow to allow that sync to occur. Or go back to 2008 R2.
Or, I mean, it's truly more secure to have a
Yes.
different it's
What about
truly more secure.
2012?
It's truly more secure to have a different
Then you
password.
get 4 more years.
It's truly more secure to have a different password for AD and Google.
It is more secure, but that's, I think, defeating the purpose of what most people are wanting the sync for, which is user and password.
Which is less secure.
Yes. Or is it more secure in that they remember the password and don't have to remember lots of passwords and have them written down on sticky notes?
LastPass.
Will LastPass work at login,
Not at login.
which is where that password comes into play?
For AD. Well, you could have come to my put everything in the cloud thing and get rid of your AD server. But maybe not at the university level
I
with
was gonna
cranky
say, I don't know,
professors.
they can get rid of their AD server.
So we don't do breaking news very often on our podcast.
What?
However,
What did just come through?
I just had an article pop up from Ars Technica, which I tend to believe Ars Technica. They're pretty good.
Oh, I saw this just a
Reliable
little bit ago.
article. So apparently,
You should just show me. Okay.
one of the federal states in Germany, now I'm not going to get into all that, but basically it's relative equivalent to a state in the United States, has deemed that it is illegal for school districts to use Office 365 in that state in Germany. And it's not just that they're saying, we're not just stating that we would prefer you not use Microsoft. He's stating that their use of Office 365 is outright legal.
Illegal.
Illegal, sorry, outright illegal. And that to me is amazing. Now, it also says early on is that technically, depending on how you interpret the German rules, they're not super transparent, and he actually is targeting all cloud-based tools, not just Office, that Google and Apple Cloud Solutions have so far not been transparent and comprehensively set out. However, they are specifically targeting Microsoft Office 365, and it is now illegal in the German state of Hesse to use Office 365 in a school district.
Oh, man.
For privacy concerns, I assume?
Yes, yep,
For privacy
Correct.
concerns.
yes,
6 million people.
correct. Office 365 declared illegal in German schools due to privacy risks.
You heard it here.
Holy
Maybe
crap.
not first, because by the time we actually publish this, it won't be breaking news. But it's breaking news right now.
That's amazing to me.
Well, you know the German word for not allowing them to use Microsoft. It's keeping them from typing. Dad joke of the day.
Oh my. Oh my.
You didn't like that one at all?
Please.
Not at all?
My Google Translate did not translate what you just said to English.
You didn't like that? A little bit?
Sprechen Sie Clippy?
Is really we're gonna end on a dad joke? Is
It
that
might
how
be the
that's gonna
case.
be? Oh my.
Well, we're all dads.
Fly in the ointment. Also true. Also
Yes,
very
yes,
true.
very true.
Well, we are at 53 minutes. Not a bad podcast. We can go longer if we've got something pressing. If not, we're just filling time so we can end it.
I was gonna say.
I have nothing pressing.
Oh,
I do have something interesting from one of my sessions, but we can cover that later.
awesome.
All right.
All right.
Well, until next time, again, thank you to Wirecast. Thank you to GoGuardian. Thank you to Simple Ed Tech for all the donations they made to make our live recordings possible. Thank you to our live studio audience as we now leave you from the wonderful and picturesque Wisconsin Dells, the second annual, third Google for Education Technical Summit.
Thank you,
Thank you.
and good night.
Love the smooth jazz voice.